Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Payment. Lincoln Donovan had seen death before. In Fallujah, he'd held dying Marines in his arms. In Chicago's violent South Side, where he'd worked as a detective for 8 years, he'd watched life drain from too many eyes. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the possibility of watching his own son die. Levi was only 9 years old. 9 years of scraped knees, baseball games, and bedtime stories. 9 years of being the one perfect thing Lincoln had ever helped create. And now he lay in a hospital bed at Chicago Memorial, his small body fighting an aggressive bacterial infection that had turned septic within hours. Mr. Donovan? The doctor's voice cut through Lincoln's thoughts. Dr. Martha Potter looked exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed. The antibiotics are working, but slowly. We need to keep him in ICU for at least another week, possibly 2. Lincoln's wife, Savannah, squeezed his hands so hard he felt bones grinding. She'd been crying for 3 days straight. Whatever it takes, Lincoln said. His voice was steady. Years of tactical training had taught him to never show weakness, even when your world was crumbling. Dr. Potter hesitated. There's the matter of the bill. I know this is difficult, but the hospital administrator wants to speak with you about payment arrangements. The number, when it came, felt like a bullet to the chest. $89,000. Even with insurance, they owed $89,000. Lincoln had been a cop for 8 years before an injury forced him out. Now he worked security at a downtown office building for $18 an hour. Savannah was a teacher. They had $4,000 in savings. We'll figure out, Lincoln said, though he had no idea how. Savannah's hand trembled in his. That night, Lincoln sat beside Levi's bed, watching the rise and fall of his son's chest. The boy looked so small among the tubes and monitors. Lincoln had been trained to face armed insurgents, to kick down doors, to make life-or-death decisions in seconds. But this enemy, invisible bacteria, impossible debt, the slow machinery of medical bureaucracy, he couldn't shoot it, couldn't arrest it, couldn't fight it. His phone buzzed. A text from his brother, Mel McKnight, different fathers, same mother, asking about Levi. Lincoln didn't respond. Mel was career military, stationed overseas. Nothing he could do from Afghanistan except worry. The next morning, Lincoln was dozing in the uncomfortable chair when rapid footsteps woke him. A woman he'd never seen before rushed into the room. Veronica Brewer, according to her hospital badge. She was an administrator, middle-aged, and she looked rattled. Mr. Donovan, I need to speak with you immediately. Lincoln stood, 6'2" of coiled tension. What's wrong? Is it Levi? No. Your son is stable. She glanced around nervously. It's about your bill. I told Dr. Potter I'll set up a payment plan. Your bill's been paid. Veronica's voice was barely a whisper. All of it. $89,000. In full. Cash. The words didn't make sense. Lincoln stared at her. What? Someone came to my office this morning. A man. He had the money in a briefcase. He counted it out in front of me, all hundreds. He said it was for Levi Donovan's medical expenses. Savannah had entered the room behind them. Who? Who would? I don't know. He wouldn't give his name. But he left this. Veronica handed Lincoln a manila envelope. He said you'd understand. With hands that had stayed steady under enemy fire, Lincoln opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The message was typed, sterile. Now you owe me your son. He is something I need. Don't run. Below the words was a photograph, a hospital photo taken yesterday. Levi, unconscious in his bed, and standing in the shadows behind him, partially obscured but undeniably there, was a man Lincoln didn't recognize. Someone had been in this room, with his son, while Lincoln slept. The paper fell from his hands. Savannah picked it up, read it, and her face went white. But Lincoln was already moving. He checked every corner of the room, looked under the bed, examined the windows. 4th floor. No way in except the door, which meant someone had walked right past the nurse's station, past security, into his son's ICU room, and taken a photograph while Lincoln slept 6 feet away. I need to see your security footage, Lincoln said to Veronica. Right now. Mr. Donovan, I don't have authorization. Lincoln stepped closer. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Someone threatened my son. You will give me that footage, or I will tear this hospital apart looking for myself. Are we clear? Veronica nodded quickly. I'll call security. While she made the call, Lincoln studied the photo again. The man in the shadows was tall, well-dressed. His face was deliberately turned away from the camera angle, but Lincoln could make out a ring on his right hand, something large, distinctive, and a watch that caught the light. Expensive. This wasn't some random threat. This was planned. Professional. What could Levi possibly have that someone would pay $89,000 for? His son was 9 years old. He liked basketball and comic books and played the violin badly. He was just a kid. Mr. Donovan? A security guard appeared. Randall Cox, a guy Lincoln knew from break room conversations. Veronica said you need to see last night's footage? ICU, 4th floor. Levi Donovan's room. From midnight to 6 a.m. Randall's expression shifted. Lincoln, I already checked this morning when the administrator asked. There's nothing. The cameras on this floor went offline from 2:45 to 3:30 a.m. Power surge, the system logged it as. But what? But I've been doing security for 12 years. Power surges don't target one floor, and they don't conveniently erase their own logs. Randall lowered his voice. Someone knew what they were doing. Someone with serious access or serious equipment. Lincoln felt ice spreading through his chest. This wasn't random. This was sophisticated. Show me everything you have. For the next hour, Lincoln reviewed footage. He saw himself sleeping in the chair, Savannah dozing on the small couch. He saw nurses coming and going. And then, at 2:45 a.m., the feed went black. When it came back at 3:30 a.m., nothing had changed, except someone had been in that room and left a photograph as proof. Savannah. Lincoln pulled his wife into the hallway. Call your sister. Ask if we can stay with her for a few days once Levi is released. Lincoln, what's happening? He showed her the photograph again. Whoever did this has resources. Money. Access. They paid our bill to put us in their debt. They want something from Levi, and they're confident enough to tell us not to run. Want what? He's 9 years old. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Lincoln pulled out his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 2 years. It rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Donovan, thought you were done with this life. Malcolm. Malcolm Stanley had been Lincoln's commanding officer in Iraq and his partner at Chicago PD. He'd retired a year ago, moved to private investigation. I need your help. Name it. Someone just paid $89,000 to buy access to my son. I need to know who, and I need to know fast. There was a pause. Send me the photo. I'll make some calls. Chapter 2. The Hunter and the Hunted. Levi came home 4 days later. The antibiotics had worked, and the infection was gone. He was weak, tired, but alive. The first thing he did was hug his dog, a mutt named Murphy that Lincoln had rescued from a shelter 3 years ago. Easy, buddy, Lincoln said, watching his son carefully. Doc says I need to take it slow. I feel fine, Dad. But Levi's smile was weaker than usual, and after 10 minutes of playing, he fell asleep on the couch. Lincoln had spent those 4 days preparing. Their apartment was in Rogers Park, a neighborhood that was safe but not secure. Ground floor, multiple entry points, too many windows. He'd installed temporary cameras at every entrance. He'd moved Levi's bed to the interior bedroom, no windows. He'd contacted a lawyer about restraining orders, though he had no name to list. And he'd researched. Malcolm had come through. The photograph had been analyzed by a former FBI tech Malcolm knew. The image had been enhanced, sharpened. The ring on the man's hand became clear. A university ring, Cornell, with distinctive markings that indicated medical school, graduating class of 1987. The watch was a Patek Philippe, worth at least $50,000. And through reflection in the forestand, they'd caught a partial view of the man's face. Malcolm had run it through facial recognition software. It took 2 days, but they got a hit, Barrett Arnold. Lincoln sat at his laptop now, reading everything he could find. Barrett Arnold, age 58. Graduated Cornell Medical School, top of his class. founded Biotech Innovations 15 years ago, a pharmaceutical research company that had made him a billionaire. Married to Claudia Arnold, Society page regular. One daughter, Juliana Arnold, age 12. On paper, Barrett Arnold was a pillar of Chicago society. Philanthropist, cancer research advocate. His company had developed 3 major drugs that had saved countless lives. But Malcolm had dug deeper. Lincoln, this guy's got shadows, his friend had said over the phone. Biotech Innovations has been cited 4 times by the FDA for ethics violations. They settled out of court each time. There are rumors about human trials that weren't properly authorized. And his daughter, Juliana, she's been sick for years. Some kind of genetic disorder. Arnold's been obsessed with finding a cure. What does that have to do with Levi? I don't know yet. But whatever Arnold wants, he's desperate enough to make threats and pay big money for it. Now, watching Levi sleep on the couch, Lincoln felt the old instincts kicking in. He'd been trained to hunt, to track, to anticipate enemy movement and counter it. For 8 years in Chicago, he'd hunted gang members, drug dealers, killers. He knew how predators thought. Barrett Arnold had made a mistake by announcing himself. By leaving the note, the photograph, he'd revealed his existence. He wanted Lincoln to know who held power. But in doing so, he'd given Lincoln a target. Lincoln's phone rang. Malcolm again. Turn on the news. Channel 5. Lincoln grabbed the remote. The local news was showing breaking coverage. A press conference at Biotech Innovations. And there, standing at a podium, was Barrett Arnold himself. Pleased to announce a major breakthrough in genetic therapy, Arnold was saying. His voice was smooth, cultured. He looked the part of a benevolent billionaire. Silver hair, expensive suit, warm smile. Our research has identified a rare genetic marker that could revolutionize treatment for dozens of inherited disorders. We're looking for volunteers to participate in a groundbreaking study. Lincoln's blood ran cold as Arnold continued. We're particularly interested in children between the ages of 8 and 10 who may carry this marker. Participation is voluntary, completely safe, and families will be compensated generously for their time. He's fishing, Malcolm said on the phone. But for what? Does Levi have any unusual medical history? Rare blood type? No, he's perfectly healthy. Until this infection, he'd barely been sick a day in his life. That might be it. Lincoln, what if Levi's immune system is what Arnold wants? You said the infection was aggressive, but he fought it off faster than doctors expected. What if there's something in his genetic makeup? Lincoln muted the TV. Malcolm, I need everything you can find on Barrett Arnold's daughter. Medical records, hospital visits, everything. That's going to be tough. Medical privacy laws. Figure it out. Use your contacts. We need to know what she has and why Arnold thinks Levi can help. After hanging up, Lincoln checked on Levi again. His son was still sleeping peacefully. Savannah was in the kitchen, trying to keep busy by cooking dinner. She was terrified. Lincoln could see it in the tightness around her eyes, the way her hands shook when she chopped vegetables. We should go to the police, she said for the 5th time. And tell them what? That someone paid our bill? They'll say we're paranoid. The note isn't technically a threat. Don't run could mean anything. And we don't have proof Arnold was in that hospital room. Just a fuzzy photo. Lincoln hated saying it, but it was true. He'd been a cop long enough to know that without hard evidence, the police couldn't do anything. So what do we do? Lincoln looked at his wife. They'd met 10 years ago at a community center where she taught after-school programs. She'd been helping a kid with homework, patient and kind, and Lincoln had fallen for her immediately. She was good, pure good, in a way that Lincoln, who'd seen the worst of humanity, found miraculous. We wait, he said. We watch. And when Arnold makes his next move, we'll be ready. The next move came faster than expected. It was 2 a.m. when Murphy started barking. Lincoln was out of bed instantly, his old service pistol kept locked in a safe, fully legal, in his hand. He moved through the dark apartment with tactical precision, checking rooms, angles, approaches. Nothing. All cameras showed empty hallways, quiet streets. But Murphy wouldn't stop barking at the front door. Lincoln checked the peephole. Nothing. He opened the door, gun ready. On the doormat was another envelope. Lincoln looked left, right, saw no one. The hallway cameras had been installed yesterday. He checked his phone app. The footage showed nothing. No one had approached the door. Except the envelope was here. Inside were two items. A photograph of Levi at school, taken yesterday during recess, and a medical record, Juliana Arnold's medical record. Lincoln scanned it quickly, his military training allowing him to parse the technical language. Juliana Arnold had Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome, rapid aging disease. She was 12, but had the body of a 70-year-old. Life expectancy, mid-teens at best. In a note, handwritten this time, "Your son has what my daughter needs. Come to my office tomorrow, 3 p.m., 227 West Adams. Come alone, or I'll take him myself." Lincoln stood in his doorway, thinking. Arnold was escalating, getting bolder. But he was also getting sloppy. He'd left another photograph, another piece of evidence. And he'd revealed his desperation by showing Lincoln his daughter's condition. A desperate man was a dangerous man, but a desperate man also made mistakes. Lincoln locked the door, checked on Levi again, still sleeping soundly, and returned his laptop. He had 14 hours until the meeting. 14 hours to prepare. 14 hours to plan. Barrett Arnold thought he was the hunter. Lincoln was about to show him what it meant to be hunted. Chapter 3. The Devil's Bargain. At 2:45 p.m., Lincoln stood outside Biotech Innovations headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in the loop. He'd told Savannah he was meeting with lawyers about the hospital situation. The lie tasted bitter, but he couldn't risk her trying to stop him. Malcolm had wanted to come. Lincoln had refused. This was his fight. He'd prepared carefully. His phone was recording audio in his pocket. He'd written down everything. Arnold's threats, the photographs, the timeline, and left it in a sealed envelope with Malcolm, instructions to open it if Lincoln didn't return by 6 p.m. But Lincoln didn't plan on disappearing. He planned on learning exactly what Barrett Arnold wanted, and then finding a way to destroy him. The lobby was all marble and modern art. Lincoln gave his name to the receptionist. She made a call, then directed him to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. She swiped it for him. 27th floor. "Mr. Arnold is expecting you." The elevator was silent, smooth. Lincoln watched the floors tick by, using the time to center himself. He'd interrogated Taliban fighters, Chicago gang leaders, men who'd killed dozens. Barrett Arnold was just another predator. The elevator opened directly into an office that took up the entire floor. Windows overlooked the city. The furniture was antique, expensive, and behind a massive desk sat Barrett Arnold. In person, he was smaller than Lincoln expected. Maybe 5'10", slender build. But his eyes were sharp, calculating. This was a man used to getting what he wanted. "Mr. Donovan, thank you for coming." Arnold's voice was pleasant, like they were meeting for coffee instead of a hostage negotiation. "Please sit." Lincoln remained standing. "What do you want with my son?" Arnold smiled. "Direct. I appreciate that. Your military record suggests you don't waste time with pleasantries. You've been researching me." "Of course. 8 years Marines, 2 tours in Iraq, decorated for valor. Then Chicago PD, excellent record until a shooting incident forced your retirement." Arnold's tone suggested he was reading from a file. "You're intelligent, capable, and protective of your family. All admirable qualities. And you're a billionaire threatening a 9-year-old boy. Get to the point." Arnold's smile faded. "I see you received Juliana's medical records. Then you understand. My daughter is dying. She has perhaps 2 years left, probably less. I've spent 15 years and $200 million trying to find a cure." He stood, walked to the windows. "Progeria is caused by a genetic mutation. The body ages rapidly, catastrophically. But in all my research, I've found one case, just one, where the disease went into remission. A child in Sweden whose immune system somehow corrected the mutation." Lincoln felt ice in his veins. "And you think Levi, your son has a remarkable immune system, Mr. Donovan. The bacterial infection that nearly killed him? That particular strain has a 40% mortality rate even with treatment. Yet Levi fought it off in 4 days. His white blood cell count, his T-cell production, his interferon response, all extraordinary." Arnold turned to face Lincoln. I had your son's blood tested during his hospital stay. I have friends at Chicago Memorial. What I found was remarkable. A genetic variant I've never seen before. Something that could be the key to saving Juliana. You stole my son's blood? Lincoln's voice was dangerously quiet. You tested him without consent. I did what any father would do to save his child. Any father wouldn't threaten another man's child. No threat, Mr. Donovan. I'm offering you a deal. Arnold returned to his desk, pulled out a folder. I need a bone marrow sample from Levi. The procedure is minimally invasive, done under light anesthesia. There's almost no risk. No, I'll pay you $5 million. The number hung in the air. $5 million. More money than Lincoln would make in a lifetime. Enough to secure Levi's future, pay for college, buy a house, never worry about money again. No, Lincoln repeated. Arnold's expression hardened. Then I'll take what I need anyway. Your son will have another medical emergency, something severe enough to require hospitalization. And during his treatment, I'll extract what I need. You won't even know it happened. Touch my son, and I'll kill you. Empty threats from a man with everything to lose. Arnold's voice turned cold. I own judges, police commissioners, half the city council. I have security teams, lawyers, resources you can't imagine. You're a security guard making $18 an hour. This is not a fight you can win. Then why offer me money? If you're so powerful, why not just take what you want? For the first time, Arnold hesitated. Because I'm not a monster, Mr. Donovan. I'm a father trying to save his daughter. I prefer to do this with your consent, to have you understand. Understand what? That your child's life is worth more than mine. Yes. Arnold's honesty was brutal. Juliana is 12 years old. She's brilliant, kind, talented. She plays piano, loves astronomy, dreams of being a doctor. She has so much life ahead of her. If only I can save her. Whereas your son, forgive me, is an average child with an average future. If his genetic material can save Juliana, isn't that a fair trade? Lincoln had never wanted to kill anyone as badly as he wanted to kill Barrett Arnold in that moment. But he kept his voice level, his body relaxed. Years of training. You talk about not being a monster, but everything you're doing proves otherwise. I'm a pragmatist, and you have 48 hours to decide. Bring Levi to my private clinic on Thursday at noon, and I'll perform the procedure with full medical protocols. Refuse, and I'll take what I need by force. Your choice. Lincoln walked to the elevator, pressed the button. As the doors opened, he turned back. You made a mistake, Arnold. Oh, you told me your plan. You showed me your weakness. You let me know exactly where you're vulnerable. Lincoln stepped into the elevator. That's how I know you're scared. Scared you're running out of time. Scared your money and power can't save your daughter. Scared that all your intelligence and resources can't solve this problem. So you're desperate. And desperate men make mistakes. Brave words from a man who's already lost. We'll see. The elevator doors closed. Lincoln walked out of the building, got in his car, a 10-year-old Honda he'd bought used, and drove 3 blocks before pulling over. His hands are shaking, not from fear, from rage. He called Malcolm. I need everything. Bank accounts, business associates, security schedules, building layouts. Everything you can find on Barrett Arnold. Lincoln, what are you planning? Arnold thinks he's playing chess. He thinks he can threaten my family, and I'll fold. Lincoln's voice was steel. He doesn't know I was trained by the Marine Corps and the Chicago PD. He doesn't know I've taken down men twice as powerful as him. He doesn't know that threatening my son just moved him to the top of my target list. This could go very wrong. It already has. Now we finish it. Lincoln hung up and drove home. He had 48 hours. 48 hours to do what the law couldn't. Protect his family from a man who thought money and power made him untouchable. Barrett Arnold was about to learn a hard lesson. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one with resources. It's the one with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Chapter 4. Ghosts and Shadows. That night, Lincoln moved his family. Pack a bag, he told Savannah. Just essentials. We're leaving in an hour. Lincoln, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. He told her everything. The meeting with Arnold, the threats, the 48-hour deadline. Savannah listened, her face growing paler with each word. We'll go to the police. The FBI. someone, and they'll investigate, which takes time we don't have. Arnold's covering his tracks. He had friends at the hospital, Savannah. He stole Levi's blood without anyone noticing. How many judges do you think he owns? How many cops? So we run? No. We hide, temporarily. And I hunt. They went to Malcolm's place, a loft in Pilsen that doubled as his office. Malcolm had security cameras, reinforced doors, and more importantly, he knew how to disappear people when necessary. You'll be safe here, Malcolm said, showing them the guest room. I've got a friend watching the building. Anyone suspicious shows up, we'll know. Levi was confused and frightened. Dad, what's going on? Why can't we go home? Lincoln knelt down, looked his son in the eyes. Remember when I told you about my time in the Marines? How my job was to protect people. Yeah. Well, there's a man who wants to hurt you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because he's sick and thinks he can use you to get better. So I'm going to make sure he can't get to you. Okay. Are you going to shoot him? The question was innocent, matter of fact. No, buddy. I'm going to do something better. I'm going to make sure he can never hurt anyone again. After Levi was settled, Lincoln and Malcolm went to the office. Malcolm had a board covered in papers, Arnold's life, mapped out in photographs and documents. Here's what I found, Malcolm said. Arnold's company is worth $2.3 billion on paper. But dig deeper and there are problems. 3 class action lawsuits pending, all related to drug trials that went wrong. FDA investigations. And his personal finances are complicated, shell companies, offshore accounts. He's hiding something. What about security? Standard corporate setup. His house in Lake Forest has a security system, guards at night. The office building has cameras and key card access. He drives a Mercedes S-Class with a personal driver, former cop named Darren Atkins. Retired from Chicago PD 5 years ago. Lincoln studied a photograph of Arnold's house, a mansion on 3 acres. He mentioned a private clinic. Find it. Malcolm typed rapidly on his laptop. Got it. Oak Street Medical Center. Boutique facility caters to wealthy clients. Arnold owns it through subsidiary. It's where he's been treating Juliana. Security? Minimal. It's a medical facility, not a fortress. Cameras at entrances, keypad locks on most doors. Staff is small, maybe 6 people total. Lincoln stared at the board. Arnold thought he had all the advantages, money, power, connections. But he'd made a fundamental error. He'd shown Lincoln his entire hand. The office, the clinic, his daughter's condition, the 48-hour deadline. Every piece of information was a weapon Lincoln could use. I need to visit someone, Lincoln said. You got the address for Darren Atkins? Malcolm raised an eyebrow. Lincoln, what are you thinking? Arnold's driver sees everything. Where Arnold goes, who he meets with. If I can flip Atkins, you think a former cop working for a billionaire is going to betray his boss? Depends on what I offer him and what I threaten him with. Lincoln drove to Bridgeport, where Atkins lived in a modest bungalow. It was 11 p.m. Lights were on inside. Lincoln knocked. The man who opened the door was in his 50s, heavy set, with the careful eyes of someone who'd worked the streets. Yeah. Darren Atkins? My name is Lincoln Donovan. I need 5 minutes of your time. Don't know you, don't want to talk. Lincoln put his foot in the door as Atkins tried to close it. Barrett Arnold is threatening my 9-year-old son. You drive for him. You know what kind of man he is. I'm asking for help. Something shifted in Atkins' expression. He studied Lincoln for a moment, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. Inside, the house was neat, lived in. Photos on the walls showed Atkins with 2 kids, both grown now. Your children? Lincoln asked. Son's in the Army. Daughter's a nurse. What do you want, Donovan? Arnold told me he's going to take my son by force. Extract bone marrow for a medical procedure. I'm trying to stop him. Atkins sat down heavily. That's not my business. You were a cop for 23 years. South District. Good record. 2 medals for bravery. Then you retired and went to work for Arnold. What? Better pay. Less stress. Or because you got passed over for promotion 1 too many times and needed the money. Lincoln leaned forward. I check your record, Atkins. You're a good man. You put away gangbangers, drug dealers. You protected people. And now you're driving around a man who threatens children. Watch yourself, Donovan. Does Arnold know you recorded that conversation? Lincoln said quietly. Adkins went very still. What conversation? The one you had with his lawyer 3 months ago. About the lawsuits. About falsified clinical trial data. About paying off the families of people who died using Arnold's drugs. It was a bluff. Lincoln had no proof of any recording. But Adkins' reaction told him everything. The former cop's face drained of color. How did you? Because you're smart, Adkins. You know Arnold is dirty. You've known it for months, maybe years. And you've been collecting evidence, either to protect yourself or to leverage if you ever need it. The question is, are you going to help a child, or are you going to stand by while a monster does what monsters do? For a long moment, Adkins said nothing. Then he stood, went to a closet, and pulled out a box. Inside were dozens of small recording devices. I've been driving for Arnold for 4 years. I've heard everything. Business deals, threats, bribes, phone calls with his lawyers. Why? Because my daughter, the nurse, she worked on one of Arnold's clinical trials. They were testing a heart medication. One of the test subjects was a kid, 15 years old. The drug caused a cardiac event. The kid died. Arnold's people covered it up, paid the family a settlement with an NDA. My daughter quit the next day. Wouldn't tell me what happened, but I knew. I started recording after that. And you've just been holding on to this, waiting for the right moment. Arnold's careful. He's got lawyers, accountants, people to hide his dirt. If I went to the cops with recordings, he'd bury me in legal paperwork. But if the right case came along, something that couldn't be covered up, Lincoln felt something like hope. Help me. Give me the recordings. I'll make sure Arnold goes down for everything. Adkins studied him. You were a Marine. A cop. You're not going to the authorities with this, are you? Not right away. What are you planning? To give Arnold exactly what he deserves. Adkins handed him the box. There's 4 years of conversations in here. More than enough to put Arnold away for decades. But be careful, Donovan. Arnold isn't just rich. He's connected. He's got people in every level of government, law enforcement, the courts. If he sees you coming, he won't. Lincoln left with a box of recordings. On the drive back to Malcolm's loft, he felt the pieces starting to fall into place. Arnold thought he was playing a fence, but he'd left himself exposed. The clinic, the conversations, the recordings, every piece of leverage Lincoln needed was within reach. Now he just needed to figure out how to use it. At the loft, Malcolm was still working. I found something else, he said when Lincoln arrived. Arnold's daughter, Juliana. She's not at home. She's been at the Oak Street Clinic for the past 3 weeks. Full-time care, meaning Arnold is desperate. She's getting worse. And if she dies before he can get Levi's bone marrow, all of this becomes meaningless. Lincoln set down the box of recordings. Malcolm, I need you to do something for me. Something that's going to cross a lot of lines. Name it. I need to get into that clinic. I need to see Juliana, Arnold. And I need to do it without anyone knowing I was there. Chapter 5. The Inside Man. Breaking into a medical facility was easier than breaking into a military installation, but harder than breaking into a house. Lincoln knew this from experience. He'd done all 3 during his time with the Marines and Chicago PD. Oak Street Medical Center was in Lincoln Park, a 4-story building that looked more like a luxury hotel than a clinic. Malcolm had pulled the security specs. Cameras at the main entrance and rear loading dock, keypad locks on the clinic floors, minimal staff at night. There's a weakness, Malcolm said, pointing to the blueprints on his laptop. The building shares a basement with the office complex next door. Fire codes require connected basements in this district for emergency evacuation. There's a door between the 2 buildings. If we can get into the office complex, we access the clinic from below. Lincoln nodded. What about the office building security? Standard setup. But I know a guy who works maintenance there. Giuseppe Francis. He owes me a favor. It took 2 phone calls and 1 meeting at a diner. Giuseppe was in his 60s, worked nights cleaning office buildings. He was hesitant until Malcolm mentioned money. $2,000 cash for 1 night's access. I don't know what you're doing, Giuseppe said, pocketing the money. And I don't want to know. You get caught. You don't know me. Understood. That night, at 2 a.m., Lincoln and Malcolm entered the office building. Giuseppe let them in through a service entrance, gave them janitorial uniforms, and pointed them toward the basement. Doors at the end of the hall. It's usually locked, but the lock's broken. Building manager keeps forgetting to fix it. The basement was all concrete and exposed pipes. Lincoln moved quietly, Malcolm following. The door to the clinic's basement was exactly where the blueprint showed. And Giuseppe was right. The lock was broken. It opened with a gentle push. "I'll wait here," Malcolm whispered. "You've got 30 minutes." Lincoln moved through the clinic's basement. There were storage rooms, a small boiler room, and stairs leading up. He took the stairs slowly, listening for any sound of guards or staff. The first floor was administrative offices, dark and empty. The second floor was exam rooms and labs. The third floor, according to the layout Malcolm had found, was patient rooms. That's where Juliana would be. Lincoln reached the third floor and checked the directory. Room 304, J. Arnold. The door was locked, but it was a standard keypad lock. Lincoln had learned how to bypass these in the Marines. It took him 45 seconds. Inside, the room was dimly lit. Medical equipment hummed softly. And in the bed, small and frail, was Juliana Arnold. Lincoln had seen the medical records, but seeing her in person was different. She looked ancient and young at the same time. A child's face with deep wrinkles, thin hair, a body that seemed to be collapsing in on itself. She was asleep, breathing slowly. On the nightstand was a photograph. Juliana, maybe 2 years ago, before the disease had progressed this far. She was smiling, holding a violin. She looked happy, healthy. Lincoln felt something he hadn't expected. Pity. This wasn't Juliana's fault. She was a victim in all this, just like Levi. Her father's obsession, his willingness to hurt others to save her, that wasn't her choice. But it didn't change what Lincoln had to do. He photographed the room, the medical equipment, the records on the wall showing Juliana's declining condition. Then he left, locking the door behind him, retracing his steps through the clinic. Malcolm was waiting in the basement. "Get what you needed?" "Yeah, let's go." Back at the loft, Lincoln reviewed everything. He had the recordings from Atkins. He had proof of Arnold's willingness to threaten and harm Levi. He had documentation of Juliana's condition and the clinic. And he had a plan forming. "Tomorrow," Lincoln said, "I'm going to Arnold's house." "Lincoln, that's insane. He's got security. I'm not breaking in. I'm visiting. During the day. As a guest." Malcolm stared at him. "You've lost your mind." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm about to flip this entire situation on its head." Lincoln pulled up a browser, started searching for something specific. "Arnold thinks he's got all the power because he's got money and connections. But I've got something he doesn't." "What's that?" "Nothing to lose. And everything to fight for." The next morning, Lincoln called Barrett Arnold's office. The secretary tried to brush him off, but Lincoln was persistent. "Tell Mr. Arnold that Lincoln Donovan is coming to his house at 2 p.m. Tell him I'm bringing something he wants. And tell him if he's not there to meet me, I'm going to the FBI with every recording Darren Atkins made over the past 4 years." There was a long pause. "Please hold." 2 minutes later, Arnold's voice came on the line. "Cold. Controlled. You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Ask Atkins." "Oh, wait, you can't. He quit this morning. Sent you an email, I believe." Another pause. "What do you want, Donovan?" "A conversation. Just you and me. No lawyers, no security. Your house, 2 p.m. And if I refuse, then by tonight, every news station in Chicago will have copies of your conversations about falsified clinical trials, bribed officials, and covered-up deaths. Your company will be finished. You'll be arrested. And Juliana will die while you're sitting in a jail cell." The silence stretched. Then, 2 p.m. "Come alone." Lincoln hung up. Malcolm was staring at him. "You're really doing this?" "Arnold thinks I'm desperate. He thinks I'm going to cave to his threats. But he doesn't understand what desperation really looks like. He's about to find out. And if this goes wrong, then you've got all the evidence. You go to the FBI. You make sure Arnold pays for everything he's done." "Lincoln, this is the only way, Malcolm. Arnold's not going to stop. He'll keep coming after Levi, keep threatening, keep escalating. The only way to stop him is to make him more afraid of me than I am of him. And I'm about to show him what real fear looks like." Chapter 6, The Turning Point. Barrett Arnold's house was a fortress disguised as a home. High walls, security gates, cameras everywhere. Lincoln pulled up to the gate at exactly 2 p.m. and pressed the intercom button. "Lincoln Donovan." I'm expected. The gates opened. Lincoln drove up the long driveway, acutely aware that he was being watched by multiple cameras. He'd left his gun at Malcolm's. Bringing it would have been suicide. Instead, he brought something more dangerous, information. Arnold was waiting at the front door. He looked older than he had in the office, more tired. Stress was eating him alive. Mr. Donovan, I admire your courage, if not your wisdom. Let's skip the pleasantries, Arnold. You got something I want. I've got something you want. Let's negotiate. Arnold led him to his study, all dark wood and leather furniture. Family photos on the walls. Juliana at various ages, slowly transforming from a healthy child to the frail figure Lincoln had seen last night. You broke into my clinic, Arnold said, sitting behind his desk. I know. The cameras caught you. Not your face, but your build, your movements. Former military, certainly. That's a felony, Mr. Donovan. So call the cops. Oh wait, you can't. Because then you'd have to explain why I was there. And that would lead to questions about Juliana's treatment, about where you're getting your research subjects, about the people who've died in your clinical trials. Arnold's jaw tightened. What do you want? I want you to leave my family alone. Forever. No more threats. No more attempts to get to Levi. You forget we exist. In exchange for what? Your silence about the recordings. In exchange for something better. Lincoln pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. Your daughter is dying. Progeria is progressing faster than you expected. She is maybe 6 months, probably less. The treatment you're planning, harvesting Levi's genetic material, it's experimental at best. You don't even know if it will work. It's her only chance. No, it's not. Lincoln tapped the folder. There's a research team in Germany. They're working on gene therapy for progeria. Actual, legitimate research. No stolen blood samples, no threats, no illegal trials. They've had success in mice. They're moving to human trials next year. Arnold opened the folder, scanned the documents. His hands trembled slightly. Next year is too late. Not if you get Juliana into the trial early. And you can. You're Barrett, Arnold. You've got money, connections, resources. You could have your daughter in Berlin by next week if you really wanted to. Why would they accept her? Because I'm going to make sure they do. Lincoln pulled out another document. I've been in contact with Dr. Warner Richardson, the lead researcher. I told him about Juliana's case. He's willing to fast-track her if you're willing to fund the research. $10 million, Arnold. That's all he needs to accelerate the human trials. $10 million, and your daughter gets a real chance at life. Not some desperate gamble involving stolen bone marrow, but actual, peer-reviewed science. Arnold stared at the documents. And the recordings? The evidence Atkins collected disappears. I have no interest in destroying you, Arnold. I just want my family safe. You fund the research, you leave us alone, and everyone wins. Juliana get a chance at life. You avoid prison. I protect my son. How do I know you won't go to the authorities anyway? Because I'm a father, just like you. I understand desperation. I understand the lengths you'd go to save your child. The difference is, I'm not willing to hurt another child to save mine. And I don't think you really want to either. Arnold was quiet for a long time. He stared at Juliana's photos on the wall. I've been so focused on finding a cure that He trailed off. I didn't see any other options. There's always another option. You just have to be willing to look for it. And if the German trial doesn't work, then at least you try the right way. And your daughter will know that her father didn't become a monster to save her. Lincoln stood. You got 24 hours to decide. Fund the research, leave my family alone, and this all goes away. Or keep threatening us, and I'll burn your entire life to the ground. Those recordings? They're already distributed to 3 different people. You can't stop them from going public if something happens to me. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you a way out. Take it. Lincoln walked to the door, then paused. One more thing, Arnold. I saw your daughter last night. She's suffering. Every day you spend chasing Levi is another day she's in pain. If you really love her, you'll stop this obsession and give her real medical care. Not experiments. Not desperate gambles. Real treatment from real doctors who won't threaten children to get research subjects. He left without waiting for a response. In the car, Lincoln's hands shook as adrenaline faded. He just walked into a lion's den and walked back out. But he wasn't safe yet. Arnold could still decide to double down on the threats. Could still send men after Levi. Malcolm called as Lincoln was driving back. Well, I gave him an out. Either he takes it, or we go to war. And if he chooses war, then I've got a backup plan. How do you feel about calling in some favors from the FBI? Lincoln, you know I left the agency under complicated circumstances. I know, but you still have friends there. People who trust you. If Arnold doesn't back down, we're going to need them. Back at the loft, Lincoln spent the evening with his family. Levi was playing video games with Malcolm. Savannah was reading, though Lincoln could see she was just staring at the same page over and over. Is it over? She asked quietly. I don't know yet. Tomorrow we'll find out. That night, Lincoln barely slept. He kept running scenarios in his head. What Arnold might do, how to counter it, what the next move would be if the negotiations failed. He'd been trained for combat, for tactical situations. But this was different. This was protecting his family from an enemy who had infinite resources and no moral boundaries. At 7 a.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Donovan? This is Dr. Richardson from Berlin. The voice had a thick German accent. I just received a very large wire transfer from Mr. Barrett Arnold. He says you can explain. Lincoln felt relief flood through him. Dr. Richardson, let me tell you about a 12-year-old girl who needs your help. Chapter 7. Unfinished Business. For 3 days, Lincoln waited for the other shoe to drop. Arnold had funded the research. Dr. Richardson confirmed that $10 million had been transferred, and Juliana was being prepped for transport to Berlin. But Lincoln didn't trust it. Men like Arnold didn't back down easily. He was right to be suspicious. On the 4th day, Malcolm burst into the loft, waving his laptop. Lincoln, we've got a problem. On the screen was a news article. Biotech Innovations announces major acquisition. Chicago security firm now under Arnold control. Lincoln read quickly. Arnold had purchased Tactical Security Solutions, the private security company that handled security for half the office buildings in downtown Chicago, including the building where Lincoln worked. He's positioning, Malcolm said. He's not attacking directly, but he's putting pieces in place. If he controls your workplace security, he controls your access to income. He could have you fired, blacklisted, or he could be legitimately expanding his business. Lincoln tried to stay calm, but his instincts were screaming. Did Atkins say anything about Arnold planning this? I'll call him. But when Malcolm dialed Atkins' number, it went straight to voicemail. They tried 3 more times over the next hour. Nothing. That's not good, Malcolm said. Lincoln grabbed his jacket. I'm going to Atkins' house. Wait, Lincoln. But Lincoln was already out the door. Something was wrong. His gut, trained by years of combat and police work, was telling him that Arnold hadn't accepted the deal. He bought time, and now he was making moves. Atkins' house in Bridgeport looked quiet. Too quiet. Lincoln knocked. No answer. He tried the door unlocked. That was wrong. Atkins was former cop. He wouldn't leave his door unlocked. Atkins, Lincoln called out, stepping inside. It's Donovan. The living room was ransacked. Furniture overturned, papers everywhere. Lincoln's hand instinctively went to his hip, reaching for a gun that wasn't there. He moved through the house carefully, checking corners. In the kitchen, he found Atkins. The former cop was alive, but badly beaten, tied to a chair. His face was swollen, blood-dried on his shirt. He looked up when Lincoln entered, eyes widening. Donovan, you need to run. Lincoln cut the ropes, helped Atkins to his feet. What happened? Who did this? Arnold's men. They came yesterday. One of the original recordings. I told them they were copies, that you had the originals. They didn't believe me. Jesus, did you go to the hospital? Can't. Arnold's got people everywhere. They said if I report this, they'll kill my kids. Said they know where my son is stationed, know which hospital my daughter works at. Atkins coughed, winced in pain. Arnold's not backing down. He's escalating. The Germany thing, it's a cover. He's still coming after your son. Lincoln's blood ran cold. How do you know? Because they told me. Said Arnold's preparing the clinic. Said he's going to grab your boy within 48 hours. Perform the procedure anyway. The research funding was just to keep you complacent. Lincoln helped Atkins to the couch, got him water. You need to get out of town. Take your family and disappear for a while. Can't protect them if I'm running. You can't protect them if you're dead. Lincoln pulled out his phone, called Malcolm. We've got a problem. Arnold played us. He's still planning to take Levi. I'll move your family to a secondary location. Where are you? Atkins' house. He was beaten. Arnold's serious about this, Malcolm. He's not stopping. After hanging up, Lincoln looked at Atkins. I'm going to end this. Tonight. How? The only way to stop a man like Arnold is to take away his power, his money, his connections, his leverage. And I know how to do it. Lincoln spent the rest of the day planning. He called in every favor he had left. A former Marine buddy who worked in IT hacking. An ex-cop who'd gone into private investigation. A lawyer friend who specialized in exposing corporate fraud. And Malcolm, who coordinated everything. This is insane, Malcolm said as they reviewed the plan. You're talking about simultaneously hitting Arnold's company, his finances, his security, and his reputation. Even if we pull it off, he'll be finished. No more threats. No more power. Just another desperate man facing federal charges. And if we fail, then we grab our families and run. New identities, new lives. But I'm not running, Malcolm. I'm tired of powerful men thinking they can do whatever they want because they have money. Arnold needs to learn that some things, some people, aren't for sale. The plan was complex, requiring precise timing. Lincoln would hit Arnold's company by releasing the recordings to the FBI and SEC simultaneously. Evidence of fraud, illegal trials, bribery. His IT friend, Toby Bruce, would hack Arnold's financial accounts and freeze them temporarily, just long enough to prevent Arnold from moving money or paying off officials. His lawyer friend, Johnny Wilkinson, would file emergency lawsuits on behalf of the families of people who died in Arnold's trials. And Malcolm would coordinate with friendly journalists to ensure the story broke everywhere at once. But the key piece, the thing that would make or break everything, was getting Juliana safely to Germany before Arnold could use her as leverage. Dr. Richardson said the transport is scheduled for tomorrow, Malcolm said. Medical flight, direct from O'Hare to Berlin. Arnold will try to stop it. He'll realize once his accounts are frozen and his company is under investigation that his daughter is his only bargaining chip left. So we protect the transport. No, we make sure Arnold can't get to the airport. Lincoln pulled up a map of Chicago. Arnold lives in Lake Forest, works downtown. The airport is northwest. If we can keep him occupied downtown while the flight leaves. You're talking about a diversion. I'm talking about making Arnold choose between his freedom and his daughter, and hoping he makes the right choice. At 8 p.m., Lincoln called Barrett Arnold directly. The billionaire answered on the first ring. Mr. Donovan, I was wondering when you'd figured out. The deal's off, right? You never intended to honor it. You're a smart man. You know I can't stop now. Juliana's condition is deteriorating faster than expected. She doesn't have time for experimental trials in Germany. She needs treatment now, and your son is the key. Then you leave me no choice. Empty threats again? Check your email. Lincoln hung up. On the other end, Arnold would be opening an email containing a single PDF, a preview of everything that was about to go public. The recordings, the clinical trial data, the names of officials he'd bribed, the families he'd paid off. All of it, time-stamped and ready to send to federal authorities. Malcolm was monitoring Arnold's response. He's calling his lawyers, making calls. He's panicking. Good. Now we wait. 20 minutes later, Arnold called back. What do you want? I want you to let Juliana go to Germany. I want you to check yourself into federal custody and confess everything. And I want you to leave my family alone forever. That's not negotiation. That's surrender. Yes, it is. Because you've lost, Arnold. You just don't know it yet. I still have resources. I still have money that's currently frozen. Lawyers who are about to abandon you. Officials who won't take your calls because they're scared of being implicated. Security staff who've been told that working for you is a career ender. You're alone, Arnold, and you're out of time. Your daughter leaves for Germany in 12 hours. You can spend those 12 hours fighting me and losing, or you can spend them saying goodbye to her before she gets the real medical care she needs. The line was silent for a long moment. Then, you destroyed me. No, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it. If Juliana dies in Germany, She won't. Dr. Richardson is one of the best in the world. And unlike you, he's not willing to hurt children to advance his research. Your daughter will be safe. She'll get treatment. She might even live. But she'll do it without you, because you're going to prison. Arnold's voice broke. I was just trying to save her. I know, but you went about it the wrong way. And now you pay the price. Lincoln hung up. Malcolm was staring at him. That was cold, man. He threatened my son. He beat Atkins. He's hurt people, killed people, all in the name of saving his daughter. He doesn't get sympathy. He gets justice. The next morning, the news exploded. Federal agents raided biotech innovations. The SEC froze Arnold's assets. Lawsuits were filed. And Barrett Arnold, billionaire philanthropist, was arrested at his home and charged with fraud, illegal human experimentation, bribery, and a dozen other crimes. Juliana Arnold boarded a medical flight to Berlin, accompanied by her mother Claudia, who'd apparently been kept in the dark about her husband's activities. The last Lincoln heard, the experimental treatment was showing promise. Levi asked about it at breakfast. Dad, is that the man who wanted to hurt me? Yeah, buddy, but he can't anymore. Did you beat him up? No, I did something better. I made sure he faced the consequences of his actions. Like timeout. Lincoln smiled. Yeah, like the world's longest timeout. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. 3 weeks after Barrett Arnold's arrest, Lincoln stood in a federal courtroom watching the man who'd threatened his family enter a plea. Guilty to all charges. The judge, a stern woman named Judith Bentley, looked down from her bench. Mr. Arnold, you've admitted to conducting illegal human trials, falsifying research data, bribing federal officials, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. These are serious charges. Arnold's lawyers had abandoned him once the full scope of his crimes became public. He stood alone at the defense table, a broken man. I understand, Your Honor. Before I pass sentence, is there anything you'd like to say? Arnold looked at Lincoln, sitting in the gallery. I'd like to apologize to Mr. Donovan and his family. What I did was inexcusable. I let my desperation to save my daughter cloud my judgment and turn me into something I never wanted to be. Lincoln felt nothing. No sympathy, no vindication. Just the cold certainty that justice was being done. Judge Bentley sentenced Arnold to 25 years in federal prison. Your crimes endangered children, Mr. Arnold. You abuse your wealth and position to harm the most vulnerable members of our society. The court shows no mercy for such actions. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Lincoln ignored them, walking with Savannah and Malcolm to the parking lot. It's really over, Savannah said. Yeah, it's over. But Lincoln knew it wasn't quite finished. There were still loose ends. That evening, he met with Darren Atkins at a coffee shop in Bridgeport. The former cop looked better. The bruises had faded, and he'd moved his family to a safe location. I heard Arnold got 25 years, Atkins said. He'll serve maybe 15 with good behavior. But his company's finished. Biotech Innovations is being liquidated. The proceeds are going to the families of people who were harmed by his trials. And Juliana, last update I got, she's responding well to the treatment in Germany. Dr. Richardson thinks she might actually beat this thing. Atkins nodded slowly. You did the right thing, Donovan, taking down Arnold, but making sure his daughter still got help. That takes character. I'm a father. I couldn't let an innocent child suffer because her father was a monster. Speaking of which, I want to give you something. Atkins slid an envelope across the table. It's a check from a settlement fund. You're entitled to it. Arnold threatened your family, put you through hell. Lincoln looked at the check. $150,000. It would change their lives. Pay off debt, buy a house, secure Levi's future. He pushed it back. Give it to the other families. The ones who lost people in Arnold's trials. We're okay. Donovan, we're okay. Lincoln repeated. Arnold paid our hospital bill. That's enough. The money should go to people who really need it. After leaving the coffee shop, Lincoln drove to Malcolm's loft. His friend was packing, getting ready to move back to his own place now that the danger had passed. You leaving us? Lincoln asked. You don't need me anymore. Arnold's locked up. The threats are gone. You can go back to your normal life. Normal? Lincoln laughed. I'm not sure I remember what that is. Malcolm handed him a beer. You did good, man. You protected your family. You brought down a corrupt billionaire. You got justice without compromising your principles. That's rare. I got lucky. If Adkins hadn't recorded those conversations, if Dr. Richardson hadn't been willing to help Juliana, if any of a dozen things had gone differently. But they didn't. You made smart choices. You fought smart. That's what matters. Lincoln drank his beer, thinking about the past month. The fear, the anger, the desperate planning. The satisfaction of watching Arnold realize he'd lost. I keep thinking about what he said, about being desperate to save his daughter. You feel sorry for him? No, but I understand him. If Levi was dying, if I thought I could save him by hurting someone else, I don't know what I'd do. Yes, you do. You'd find another way. That's the difference between you and Arnold. He saw one solution and took it, no matter who got hurt. You look for a solution that didn't require destroying an innocent child. They drank in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Malcolm said, "What are you going to do now? Go back to security work? Maybe. Or maybe I'll do something else. I've been thinking about getting my PI license. Helping people who can't afford fancy lawyers or security. People facing the Baird Arnolds of the world. You'd be good at it." Yeah, I think I would. The next day, Lincoln took Levi to a Cubs game. It was something they'd been planning before the infection, before Arnold, before everything went sideways. Sitting in Wrigley Field, eating hot dogs and watching terrible baseball, Lincoln felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. "Dad," Levi said around a mouthful of hot dog, "are there going to be more bad guys?" Lincoln considered lying, telling his son that the world was safe and nothing bad would ever happen again. But he respected Levi too much for that. "Yeah, buddy, there will be. There are always going to be people who try to hurt others. But you'll stop them? I'll do my best. And when you're older, maybe you'll help stop them too. Like a superhero. Like a good man who stands up for people who can't stand up for themselves." Levi thought about this. "Okay, I can do that." Lincoln put his arm around his son. "Yeah, I know you can." That night, back at their apartment, they'd moved back home once Arnold was arrested. Lincoln sat with Savannah on the couch. Levi was in his room, playing video games. Murphy was asleep at their feet. "You okay?" Savannah asked. "Yeah, for the first time in a month, I'm actually okay. No more secrets. No more dangerous plans. No more secrets." Lincoln took her hand. "Arnold's in prison. His company's destroyed. The people he hurt are getting justice. It's over. What about the others? The people Arnold worked with? His lawyers, his security staff? FBI's handling it. Turns out when you give them evidence of a massive criminal conspiracy, they're pretty thorough about finding everyone involved." Savannah leaned against him. "I was so scared. Scared we'd lose Levi. Scared Arnold would hurt you. Scared we'd have to run and never stop running." "I know. I was scared too. You didn't seem scared. You seemed determined. Angry maybe, but not scared. I was terrified every single day, but I couldn't show it. Because if I showed fear, Levi would be afraid. You would be afraid. And we needed to be strong. You were strong enough for all of us." Lincoln kissed the top of her head. "We're safe now. That's what matters." The next morning, Lincoln got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, conditioned by weeks of threats. But something made him pick up. "Mr. Donovan? This is Claudia Arnold." Lincoln tensed. Barrett Arnold's wife. "Mrs. Arnold, I wanted to call and thank you." Her voice was shaky. "For making sure Juliana got to Germany. For giving her a chance when my husband was willing to hurt your son. Mrs. Arnold, you don't need to. Please, let me say this." She took a breath. "I didn't know what Barrett was doing. I knew he was obsessed with finding a cure, but I didn't know he was threatening people, conducting illegal trials. When the FBI told me everything, I was horrified. How's Juliana?" She's improving. Dr. Richardson says the treatment is working. She might actually have a future now. And it's because of you. You could have let her die to punish Barrett, but you didn't. You found a way to save her while still stopping him. She's an innocent child. She didn't deserve to suffer for her father's crimes. Thank you. Thank you for seeing that." Claudia paused. "I'm divorcing Barrett. I'm taking Juliana and starting over somewhere else. Away from Chicago, away from his legacy. I wanted you to know that. Good luck, Mrs. Arnold." After hanging up, Lincoln sat at his kitchen table, thinking about the paths not taken. If he'd gone to the police immediately, they might not have acted fast enough. If he'd tried to run, Arnold would have found them. If he tried to fight Arnold directly, someone would have gotten hurt, probably Lincoln himself. But he'd found a third way, a smarter way. He'd used Arnold's own tactics against him. Leverage, information, pressure. He'd turned Arnold's strength into weakness. And in the end, justice had been served without anyone innocent getting hurt. Levi wandered into the kitchen, still in his pajamas. "Dad, can we go to the park today?" "Yeah, buddy, we can go to the park." "And can Murphy come?" "Murphy can definitely come." Lincoln watched his son pour cereal, chattering about a school project and a friend's birthday party next week. Normal things. Safe things. The things that mattered. Barrett Arnold had tried to take this away. Had tried to turn Levi into a medical experiment, had tried to steal his bone marrow, his health, his future, all for a desperate gamble that might not even have worked. But Arnold had failed, not because Lincoln was stronger or richer or more powerful, but because Lincoln had something Arnold didn't, the willingness to find a solution that didn't require destroying someone else's child. And in the end, that had made all the difference. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 6 months later, Lincoln sat in his new office, a small space above a hardware store in Logan Square, but it was his. The sign on the door read, Donovan Investigations, Private Investigation Services. Malcolm had helped him get his PI license. The process had been faster than expected. His military and police background helped, and Judge Bentley had written a letter of recommendation after the Arnold case. The phone rang. Lincoln's first client, Donovan Investigations. "Mr. Donovan, my name is Jane Rivers. I was given your name by Darren Atkins. He said you help people who are facing powerful enemies." Lincoln leaned forward. "Tell me what's happening." Jane's story poured out. A custody battle against her wealthy ex-husband who was using his money and connections to take her kids. Threats. Intimidation. The kind of abuse of power that Lincoln had become intimately familiar with. "Can you help me?" Lincoln thought about Levi, about the fear he'd felt watching his son in that hospital bed, about the rage he'd felt when Arnold threatened his family, about the satisfaction of watching justice finally be served. "Yes," he said, "I can help you." After taking down Jane's information and scheduling a meeting, Lincoln leaned back in his chair. This was what he was meant to do. Not security guard work, not being stuck behind a desk. This, helping people who couldn't help themselves, taking on the powerful bullies who thought money made them untouchable. His phone buzzed with a text from Savannah. "How's the first day going?" Lincoln smiled and typed back, "Good. Really good." That evening, he picked up Levi from baseball practice. His son was muddy and happy, chattering about a home run he'd almost hit. "Dad, Coach says I'm getting better at batting." "That's great, buddy. And Marcus said his dad knows about you, about how you caught the bad guy who was hurting people. He said you're like a superhero." Lincoln laughed. "I'm not a superhero. I'm just a guy who didn't want bad things to happen to good people. That's what superheroes do, though." "I guess you're right." At home, Savannah had made dinner, tacos, Levi's favorite. They ate together, talking about their days. Normal family things. The kind of evening that Arnold had nearly stolen from them. After Levi went to bed, Lincoln and Savannah sat on the back porch. It was early fall, the air cooling, leaves starting to turn. "You seem happy," Savannah said. "I am. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Helping people. Yeah, the Barrett Arnolds of the world. They count on people being too scared or too poor to fight back. They think they're untouchable. I want to prove them wrong." Savannah took his hand. "Just promise me you'll be careful. I don't want to go through another month like that one. I promise. No more playing detective with billionaire criminals. Just helping regular people with regular problems." But even as he said it, Lincoln knew that wasn't quite true, because regular people sometimes faced extraordinary problems. And those problems required someone willing to go the extra mile, to take the risks, to stand up when standing up was dangerous. That someone was him now. A week later, Lincoln got a letter. Federal Prison, Terre Haute, Indiana. The return address made his blood run cold. Barrett Arnold. He almost threw it away unread. But curiosity won. "Mr. Donovan, I write this from cell that will be my home for the next decade and a half. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, about the choices I made. You were right. I became a monster trying to save my daughter. I lost sight of everything I believed in: ethics, morality, the value of human life. I told myself the ends justified the means. But they didn't. Juliana is doing well. Claudia sends me updates. The treatment in Germany worked. My daughter is going to live. She might even have a normal life. And it's because of you, because you found a solution I was too blind to see. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did to you and your family was unforgivable. If I could take it back, I would. My company is gone. My fortune is gone. My family is gone. All I have left is the knowledge that my daughter will live. That has to be enough. Thank you for being the man I couldn't be. The one who protected his child without destroying someone else's. Barrett Arnold. Lincoln read the letter twice, then folded it carefully. He would keep it, he decided, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that even good intentions could lead to terrible actions if you weren't careful. A reminder to always look for the third option, the solution that didn't require sacrificing someone else. Malcolm stopped by the office later that day. Heard you got your first case. Custody battle. Yeah. Wealthy ex-husband trying to buy his way to sole custody, using lawyers and private investigators to intimidate the mother. Think you can help her? I know I can. Lincoln showed Malcolm the evidence he'd already started gathering. Financial records that suggested the ex-husband was hiding assets, witness statements about his temper, documentation of his lawyer's questionable tactics. You're good at this, Malcolm said. I learned from the best. You gonna come work with me? Donovan and Stanley Investigations has a nice ring to it. Malcolm considered it. Maybe. Let me finish up this case I'm on. Then we'll talk about a partnership. That night, Lincoln had a dream. He was back in Iraq, crouched behind a wall while bullets flew overhead. But instead of his Marine squad, Levi was beside him. And Lincoln was trying to protect his son from an enemy that kept shifting, changing, attacking from new angles. He woke up sweating, heart pounding. But when he checked on Levi, his son was sleeping peacefully, Murphy curled up at the foot of his bed. The threats were over. Arnold was in prison. They were safe. But Lincoln knew there would always be more threats, more dangerous men, more families that needed protecting. The world was full of Barrett Arnolds, wealthy, powerful people who thought they could do whatever they wanted. And Lincoln was going to make sure they couldn't. 3 months later, Jane Rivers called him, crying with relief. Mr. Donovan, we won. The judge awarded me full custody. My ex-husband's lawyers withdrew when you exposed all those financial irregularities. I'm glad I could help. You did more than help. You saved my family. How much do I owe you? Lincoln quoted her a number, much less than he could have charged. She protested, but Lincoln was firm. This is what I charge. Take the money you saved and spend it on your kids. After hanging up, Lincoln looked around his small office. Cases were piling up. Other people who'd heard about the man who took down Barrett Arnold, the investigator who helped people facing impossible odds. Savannah brought Levi by for lunch. His son was excited because he'd been chosen for the school violin recital. Dad, will you come watch me play? Wouldn't miss it for the world, buddy. After they left, Lincoln stood at his window, looking out over Logan Square. Somewhere in this city, there were more families in danger, more powerful men abusing their position, more people who needed help. And Lincoln was ready. He'd been trained by the Marines to face enemy combatants. He'd been trained by Chicago PD to catch criminals. But the past 6 months had taught him something more important: how to fight for justice when the law couldn't help, how to protect the innocent when the powerful try to hurt them, how to be the kind of man his son could be proud of. Barrett Arnold had tried to take everything from him. Instead, Arnold had given him something: purpose. Lincoln Donovan had found his calling, not as a security guard, not as a cop, but as someone who stood between the powerful and the powerless, who fought when fighting seemed impossible, who protected families when families needed protecting most. The phone rang again. Another case. Another family in need. Lincoln answered with a smile. Donovan Investigations. How can I help you? And the work continued. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Call from Hell. The satellite phone buzzed against Preston Marshall's chest as he crouched behind the concrete barrier. AK-47 rounds splintering the wall inches from his head. 3 days deep in Syrian territory, extracting a CIA asset, and now this. He almost ignored it, almost. But the caller ID showed Sheriff's Department, Millbrook County. Home. Marshall, he answered, pressing himself deeper into cover as his team returned fire. Sir, this is Sheriff Matthew Raymond. We found your boy, Nathan, wandering alone in Pine Ridge woods about 2 hours ago. He's safe now, but the sheriff's voice carried weight that made Preston's blood freeze. Says his mama's boyfriend left him there as punishment for breaking something. Kid's been out there since yesterday morning. Preston's world tilted. Nathan was only 8. Yesterday morning, meant his son spent a night alone in woods where black bears roamed and temperatures dropped to near freezing. Where is he now? Preston's voice was deadly calm. The tone his team knew meant someone was about to die. Hospital, getting checked over. He's asking for you, sir. Kid says his mama told him you were dead, killed overseas. She didn't even know he was missing. The line went quiet except for gunfire around Preston. Then a crackling sound as the phone changed hands. Preston, Kelly's voice, his wife of 10 years, sounded annoyed rather than worried. Look, I know you're probably busy playing soldier, but this whole thing is blown out of proportion. Sean was just teaching Nathan some responsibility. Sean. Preston's grip tightened on the phone. Who the hell is Sean? My friend. He lives here now. Has for 6 months. Nathan broke his vintage guitar, and Sean felt the boy needed to learn consequences. So he abandoned my son in the woods? It wasn't abandonment. It was, look, honestly, Preston, maybe this is a sign. Nathan's weak, always crying, always needing help. He should have found his way back. Any son of yours should have been stronger. Her voice turned cold. Maybe he's not really yours. Maybe weak blood just can't survive like it should. The words hit Preston like physical blows. This woman, who he'd married, who'd promised to love and protect their child, was essentially saying she wished their son had died in those woods. I'm coming home, Preston said. Don't bother. We don't need you here. We're doing fine without you. The line went dead. Around Preston, the firefight continued, but he felt detached from it. His team leader, Glenn Booker, slid over beside him. Bad news from home? The worst. Preston checked his watch. How fast can we extract? Chopper's inbound, 10 minutes. What? Preston looked at his longtime friend and teammate. Glenn had served with him through 4 deployments, saved his life twice, knew him better than anyone. Someone hurt my son. And my wife. Preston paused, the reality settling in. My wife let them. Glenn's expression darkened. He'd met Kelly, played with Nathan during their last leave. What do you need? Time to think. And maybe your help when we get back. As the extraction helicopter approached, Preston stared at the satellite phone. They had no idea who he really was. Not Sean, not even Kelly. To them, he was just another deployed soldier, far away and helpless. They thought Preston Marshall was some regular army grunt they could manipulate and dismiss. They had no idea Preston Marshall was a ghost, one of 12 men in a unit that didn't officially exist, that handled problems the government needed to disappear. They didn't know about the unmarked graves in 7 countries, the dictators who'd vanished, the terror cells that had simply ceased to exist after Preston visited them. But they were about to learn. Chapter 2. The Ghost's Return. Preston Marshall's official military record listed him as Staff Sergeant, 75th Ranger Regiment, currently deployed to classified locations. What it didn't mention was the decade he'd spent in a program so black it didn't have a name, just a number, Task Force 117. 12 men who solve America's dirtiest problems with methods that would make war criminals flinch. The flight home gave him 18 hours to think, and Preston Marshall was at his most dangerous when he had time to think. He'd met Kelly Walton at a military wives support group, Mixer, 8 years ago. She'd seemed perfect, beautiful, supportive, claimed she understood the military life. They'd married within 6 months. Nathan came a year later, and Preston had believed he'd found something real, something worth protecting. Now, replaying conversations and memories through the lens of betrayal, warning signs emerged like a photograph developing. The way she'd always pushed for more life insurance. Her odd questions about his work, his teammates, his schedule. The recent insistence that he shouldn't bother calling so often. Preston's phone contained 67 missed calls from Sheriff Raymond, but none from Kelly. Not one call asking if he'd gotten the message about Nathan. Not one expression of concern for their son. Touching down at Dover Air Force Base, Preston immediately called Sheriff Raymond back. "Mr. Marshall, thank God. How soon can you get here? I'm stateside now. How's Nathan? Physically, he's fine. Mentally," the sheriff paused. "This boy's been through hell. Not just the Woods incident. Sir, I need to ask you some questions about your home situation." 2 hours later, Preston sat across from Sheriff Raymond in the Millbrook County Sheriff's Office. Nathan was in the next room, being cared for by a victim's advocate. "Your son's been telling us things," Sheriff Raymond said carefully. "About this Sean character. About your wife. I need to know, did you give permission for another man to discipline your child?" "I've never heard of Sean until yesterday." "What kind of discipline?" Sheriff Raymond slid a folder across the desk. "Photos from the hospital. Your son has old bruises, Mr. Marshall. Healed ones and fresh ones. The doctors say the pattern suggests regular physical punishment over months." Preston opened the folder and felt something dark and cold settle in his chest. Nathan's small body was mapped with bruises in various stages of healing. Handprints on his arms. Belt marks on his back. "The boy's afraid to go home," Sheriff Raymond continued. "Keeps asking if his mama will be angry that he told people about the rules." "What rules?" "Sean's rules. No crying. No asking for help. No telling anyone outside the house about family business. And if Nathan broke any rules..." Sheriff Raymond gestured to the photos. Preston closed the folder, his hands steady despite the rage building inside him. "Where are they now? Your wife and this Sean fellow?" "They're at your house. Been there all day." "Sir, I have to ask, did you know about any of this?" "No." Preston met the sheriff's eyes. "I've been deployed for 8 months. Last time I was home, none of this was happening. We need to charge this Sean with child abuse. Potentially your wife too, for allowing it. But I need to know, are you looking for custody of your son?" Preston thought about Kelly's words on the phone. "He should have been dead. I don't want a loser's blood." "Yes, full custody. And Sheriff, I want to know everything about Sean. Everything." An hour later, Preston sat with Nathan in a small room designed to be comforting for children. His son looked thin, scared, older than his 8 years. "Daddy? Mama said you were dead." Preston knelt down to Nathan's level. "I'm not dead, son. I'm here now. Sean said soldiers like you die because you're weak. He said if I was really your son, I wouldn't be weak either." Nathan's voice was barely a whisper. "But I am weak, Daddy. I couldn't find my way out of the woods." Preston gathered his son into his arms, feeling the boy's fragile frame, the way he flinched at sudden movements. "You're not weak, Nathan. You're 8 years old. You survive a night in the woods alone. Most grown men couldn't do that. Sean says. Sean is wrong about everything." Preston pulled back to look Nathan in the eyes. "And he's never going to hurt you again. I promise you that." It was a promise Preston Marshall intended to keep, no matter what it cost. Chapter 3. Gathering Intelligence. Preston spent the night in a motel, Nathan safely sleeping beside him. By morning, he'd made 17 phone calls and learned everything there was to know about Sean Knapp. Sean Knapp, 34, originally from Detroit. Dishonorable discharge from the Army after 2 years for assault on a fellow soldier. 3 arrests for domestic violence, 2 convictions. Currently unemployed, but driving a new pickup truck and living in Preston's house, supporting himself on Kelly's nurse's salary and what appeared to be Preston's direct deposit military pay. But the most interesting detail came from Glenn Booker, who'd made some calls of his own. "Your boy Sean's been busy," Glenn reported over an encrypted call, talking to people about a military wife whose husband's got life insurance worth $500,000. Been asking around about how to contact overseas bases, how deployment notifications work. Preston felt pieces clicking into place. He's trying to figure out how to make me disappear permanently. Gets better. Your wife's been to a lawyer. Filed preliminary divorce papers 3 months ago. But here's the kicker. She listed you as missing in action, presumed dead. The picture crystallized. Kelly and Sean weren't just having an affair. They were actively working to erase Preston from existence, legally and literally. The abuse of Nathan wasn't just cruelty, it was elimination of evidence. If Nathan disappeared too, there'd be no one to contradict their story of the grieving widow whose husband and son died overseas. I need surveillance on my house, Preston told Glenn. And I need it yesterday. Already done. Russ Ward's got eyes on them. You want to know what they're doing right now? Preston checked his watch. 10 a.m. Tell me. Your wife's at work. Sean's in your house, going through your personal effects. Looks like he's boxing things up. Also looks like he's moved completely into your bedroom. Preston closed his eyes, feeling the familiar cold focus that came before a mission. Any weapons in the house? Sean's got a handgun. Carried it outside twice this morning. Seems comfortable with it. Your wife gets home at 6. They're planning something for tonight. We intercepted a text about finishing preparations. For what? Don't know yet. But Preston, Glenn's voice carried concern. These people aren't just greedy. They're dangerous. The way they've manipulated the situation, the abuse of your son, the legal maneuvering, this is sophisticated. Sean might be a grunt, but someone's helping them think this through. Preston looked at Nathan, still sleeping in the motel bed. His son's face was peaceful for the first time since Preston had arrived. The boy felt safe now, protected, and Preston intended to make sure he stayed that way. I need to see them, Preston said. Tonight, face to face. Preston, you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. They think I'm some harmless deployed soldier they can manipulate. They have no idea what I am or what I'm capable of. Preston's voice carried the deadly calm his targets used to hear in their final moments. It's time they learned. That afternoon, Preston drove past his own house for the first time in 8 months. From the outside, it looked normal, same blue shutters, same white fence he'd painted before his last deployment. But now it felt contaminated. Sean Knapp's black pickup sat in Preston's driveway like a declaration of conquest. Through the front window, Preston could see a man moving around inside. His house, his sanctuary, defiled. Preston parked down the street and watched. At 6:15, Kelly's Honda pulled into the driveway. Preston studied his wife as she got out of the car. Same auburn hair, same graceful movements. But when she walked inside and immediately kissed the man waiting for her, Preston saw her clearly for the first time. Kelly Walton Marshall was beautiful, charming, and utterly without conscience. The way she moved through what had been their home, the casual intimacy with Sean, the complete absence of any concern for a missing son, it painted a picture of someone who'd never been the woman Preston thought he'd married. At 7 p.m., Preston walked up to his own front door and knocked. Sean opened it, confident and smirking until he saw Preston's face. Then his expression shifted to something between fear and aggression. "You must be the husband," Sean said, not moving aside. "Kelly's told me all about you." Preston looked past Sean into his own living room. His furniture remained, but Sean's belongings were scattered throughout. The family photos were gone. In their place hung a picture of Kelly and Sean together, both smiling, both very much at home. "Where's my son?" Preston asked quietly. "Safe," Sean replied, chest puffing out. Safer than he was before. Kid needed real discipline, real guidance. Not some part-time father who abandons his family for months at a time. Kelly appeared behind Sean, sliding her arm around his waist in a gesture of territorial possession. "Preston, you actually came." "Of course I came. Someone abandoned my 8-year-old son in the woods." Kelly shrugged. Nathan needed to learn consequences. In the real world, weakness gets you killed. Preston studied their faces, Sean's aggressive smugness, Kelly's cold indifference. These people had tortured his child and felt no remorse. Had planned to erase Preston from existence and felt entitled to do so. "Can I come in?" Preston asked. "This is still my house." Sean blocked the doorway. Actually, it's not. Kelly's filing papers. This is her house now. Her choice who lives here. And you chose him, Preston said to Kelly. I chose a real man, Kelly replied. Someone who's here. Someone who can provide real security, real leadership. Not some weekend warrior playing soldier. Preston smiled, the smile that had been the last thing 17 men had ever seen. You think I'm playing soldier? Something in his tone made Sean step back slightly. But Kelly seemed oblivious to the danger. I know exactly what you are, Preston. A disappointment. A failure as a husband and father. Nathan deserves better. I deserve better. Preston nodded thoughtfully. You're right about one thing, Kelly. You both deserve exactly what's coming to you. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Sean, you might want to sleep with one eye open. The real world you mentioned? I own it. As Preston walked away, he heard the door slam behind him. But he also heard Sean's voice, sharp with new fear. Kelly, what did you tell me about his job? Exactly what does he do overseas? Preston smiled again as he got in his car. Let them wonder. Let them worry. The hunt had begun. Chapter 4, Building the Web. Preston Marshall hadn't survived a decade in the world's most dangerous places by being impulsive. Revenge was like any other operation. It required intelligence, planning, and precise execution. From his motel room, Preston established a command center. 3 laptops, encrypted communication gear, and a secure connection to resources that didn't officially exist. By morning, he knew more about Sean Knapp and Kelly Marshall than they knew about themselves. Sean's finances told an interesting story. Despite being unemployed, he'd made significant cash deposits over the past 6 months, always under the $10,000 reporting threshold, always in different branches. His new truck was purchased with cash. So were several expensive gifts for Kelly. Someone's bankrolling him. Glenn observed over their secure connection. Question is who? Preston pulled up Sean's phone records. Look at this pattern. Same number called him every Tuesday and Friday for 4 months. Call stopped 2 weeks ago. Right around when the abuse of Nathan escalated, Glenn noted. Maybe Sean was getting paid to play house. And when the money stopped, he got frustrated. The number traced to a disposable phone, but Preston had resources beyond normal law enforcement. Within 6 hours, he had a name. Donald Clark, former Army military intelligence, dishonorably discharged for selling classified information. This gets deeper. Preston told Nathan that afternoon as they sat in the hospital cafeteria. The boy was staying another day for observation, which gave Preston time to work. Daddy, are you really going to make them go away? Nathan asked quietly. Preston knelt down to his son's level. Nathan, some people in this world are bad. They hurt others and don't feel sorry about it. When someone hurts my family, I make sure they can't hurt anyone else ever again. Like a superhero? Preston considered this. Something like that. But superheroes have rules. I don't. That evening, Preston paid a visit to Donald Clark's apartment in Richmond. Clark answered the door expecting someone else. His face went white when he saw Preston. You're supposed to be dead, Clark stammered. Funny thing about that, Preston said, pushing past Clark into the apartment. Turns out your boy Sean's not as thorough as you thought. Clark's apartment was a mess of conspiracy theories, surveillance equipment, and empty whiskey bottles. On the kitchen table lay a floor plan of Preston's house, detailed notes about his deployment schedule, and most damning of all, a life insurance policy application with Preston's forged signature. Let me guess, Preston said, studying the documents. You convince lonely military wives that their husbands are expendable. Sean moves in, establishes a relationship, then arranges an accident overseas. The wife collects insurance money. You take a cut. Clark's silence was confirmation enough. How many times have you done this, Donald? I want a lawyer. Preston laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. You think this is a legal proceeding? You conspired to murder a federal operator and abuse his child. This isn't a courtroom, Donald. This is a reckoning. 10 minutes later, Preston had everything. Names, dates, bank accounts. Sean and Kelly weren't just opportunistic predators. They were part of a sophisticated operation targeting military families. 3 other wives in the past 2 years. 3 other husbands who'd died in mysterious overseas accidents. 3 other children who'd simply vanished from the records. Your boy Sean specializes in disposing of inconvenient kids. Clark had sobbed before Preston left him unconscious on his apartment floor. Makes it look like accidents. Runaways. That's why they needed Nathan gone. Can't have witnesses to Daddy's death. Preston sat in his car outside Clark's building, processing the magnitude of what he'd uncovered. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a systematic murder operation. His wife hadn't just chosen another man. She'd chosen to become an accessory to multiple homicides. The cold rage that had been building since Nathan's rescue crystallized into something sharper. These people had killed before. They would have killed Preston, killed Nathan, and moved on to the next family without conscience or regret. Preston made a call. Glenn, I need the team. How many? All of them. And I need them dark. No official channels, no oversight. Preston, what did you find? A cancer that needs cutting out. And I'm going to need more than a scalpel. Chapter 5, Allies and Shadows. The abandoned warehouse in Norfolk had been Task Force 117's unofficial meeting place for years. When Preston arrived at midnight, 11 men were waiting, the deadliest collection of human beings ever assembled in one room. Glenn Booker, demolitions expert who could turn a toothpick into an explosive. Marco Banks, sniper who'd once taken out 3 targets with 1 bullet. Joseph Peters, psychological warfare specialist who could break minds without leaving marks. Each man had committed acts that would horrify civilized society in service of a country that would deny their existence if captured. Gentlemen, Preston began, I need to tell you about Sean Knapp. For 30 minutes, Preston laid out the conspiracy. The murdered soldiers, the insurance fraud, the systematic targeting of military families. When he finished, the room was silent. How many children? Asked Joseph Peters. 7 that we know of. Nathan would have been the 8th. Marco Banks, a father of 3, spoke first. What do you need? I need Sean Knapp and Kelly Marshall to disappear. But first, I need them to suffer. I need them to know exactly why they're dying and who's killing them. Glenn leaned forward. This isn't official task force business. No, Preston agreed. This is personal. Anyone who doesn't want to participate. Shut up, said Eugene Diaz, their communications specialist. You think any of us would walk away from this? These bastards killed soldiers, murdered children. They're enemies of the United States. More than that, added Stanley McClure, their infiltration expert. They're predators who turned military service into a hunting ground. They made our deployments into their opportunity. Preston felt something loosen in his chest, the fear that he might have to handle this alone. These men understood. They'd all left families behind when they deployed, trusting in the system to protect what mattered most. The betrayal Kelly and Sean represented was an attack on every military family. What's the plan? Glenn asked. Preston spread a map of Millbrook County on the table. Sean thinks he's the hunter. We're going to show him what it feels like to be prey. Over the next 2 hours, they planned an operation more complex than most government-sanctioned missions. Phase 1, isolation. Cut Sean and Kelly off from outside support. Eliminate their escape routes. Make them completely dependent on each other. Phase 2, psychological pressure. Make them paranoid, fearful, uncertain of what was real. Phase 3, the revelation. Show them exactly who Preston Marshall was and what he was capable of. Phase 4, justice. What about Donald Clark? Marco asked. Clark's already handled, Preston replied. He'll spend the rest of his life in a military prison, assuming he survives long enough to get there. And Kelly? Joseph asked. She's still technically a military spouse. Preston's expression didn't change. Kelly forfeited any protection when she conspired to murder her husband and child. She's an enemy combatant now. The team dispersed at dawn, each man with specific assignments. Preston returned to the hospital to find Nathan awake and asking for breakfast. Daddy, are the bad people going away now? Very soon, son. But first, we need to make sure they can never hurt anyone else. Other kids like me? Preston nodded. Other kids exactly like you. Nathan considered this with the seriousness only children could bring to complex moral questions. Good. They shouldn't hurt kids. That afternoon, Phase 1 began. Sean's new truck developed engine trouble on his way to the store. Sugar in the gas tank, courtesy of Russ Ward's midnight visit. Sean's bank accounts suddenly showed suspicious activity, triggering fraud investigations. Eugene's expertise with financial systems. Kelly's nursing supervisor received an anonymous tip about drug theft. False, but enough to trigger an investigation that would keep her busy. By evening, Sean and Kelly were stranded at Preston's house, cut off from money and transportation, with Kelly facing suspension from work pending investigation. Preston watched from across the street as Sean paced angrily in the living room while Kelly sat at the kitchen table, talking rapidly on her phone. Even from a distance, Preston could read their body language, stress, fear, the first cracks in their confidence. His phone buzzed with a text from Glenn. Phase 1 complete. They're trapped. Preston typed back. Begin Phase 2. Chapter 6. The Pressure Mounts. The psychological campaign began at 3 a.m. Kelly woke to the sound of Nathan crying, his voice coming through the baby monitor they'd kept from when he was younger. But Nathan was safely sleeping at the hospital, miles away. Eugene's voice modulation equipment could replicate any sound, and the boy's cries echoing through the dark house sent Kelly stumbling through rooms, searching for a child who wasn't there. Sean found her in Nathan's empty bedroom, shaking. I heard him, she whispered. He was crying for help. There's no one here, Sean snapped, but Preston could see through the surveillance cameras that the man was rattled too. The next night, Sean's laptop displayed photos of Preston in full tactical gear, face painted for war, holding weapons that weren't in any public database. The photos vanished when Sean tried to save them, but the message was clear. You have no idea who you're dealing with. On the third night, Kelly's phone rang every hour from Nathan's number, the boy pleading for his mommy to come find him in the woods, lost and scared. When Kelly tried to call back, the number was disconnected. By day 4, they were barely speaking to each other. Sean had started drinking heavily. Kelly jumped at every sound. The surveillance cameras showed them checking locks obsessively, looking over their shoulders, arguing in harsh whispers. They're breaking, Glenn reported. Kelly tried to leave twice. Her car won't start. Sean called 3 different mechanics. None will come out to the house. How's their communication with outside? Severed. Sean's phone only gets calls from numbers we control. Kelly's been suspended from work. Their internet randomly cuts out. They're completely isolated. Preston felt a cold satisfaction. Sean and Kelly were experiencing a fraction of what Nathan had endured. Fear, helplessness, the knowledge that no one was coming to help. On day 5, Preston made his move. He arrived at the house in full daylight, wearing his dress uniform with every ribbon and medal earned in a decade of classified operations. He knocked politely on the front door. Sean answered, haggard and suspicious. His eyes widened when he saw Preston, not the uncertain husband from their last meeting, but a decorated special operations soldier whose very bearing radiated lethal competence. We need to talk, Preston said calmly. This time, Sean stepped aside immediately. Kelly emerged from the kitchen, stopping short when she saw Preston. You look different. I am different. Preston sat in his own living room like a conquering general. Tell me, Kelly, what did you think I did overseas? Infantry. Regular army stuff. Preston smiled. I've never been regular army. For the past 10 years, I've been part of a unit that doesn't officially exist. We handle problems that require permanent solutions. Sean found his voice. You're trying to scare us. No, Sean. I'm trying to educate you. Preston leaned back casually. Do you know how many people I've killed? The question hung in the air like smoke. 17 that I killed personally. Hundreds more that died because of operations I planned or led. Men who thought they were untouchable. Men who thought they could hurt innocent people without consequences. Kelly's face had gone pale. Preston, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. Because you and Sean have been planning to murder me and my son. And in my world, that makes you legitimate targets. Sean jumped up, reaching for the gun Preston knew he kept in the kitchen drawer. He was fast, but Preston was faster. Before Sean could clear the doorway, Preston was behind him, one hand controlling Sean's gun arm, the other pressed against his carotid artery. Sit down, Preston said quietly, and Sean's legs gave out as Preston released pressure on his throat. Kelly was frozen, watching her lover collapse like a broken toy. Here's what's going to happen. Preston continued conversationally. You're going to tell me about Donald Clark, about the other families you've destroyed, about the children you've murdered, and then you're going to beg me for a mercy you never showed them. Sean coughed, gasping for air. We never killed any kids. No. Preston pulled out his phone, showing them crime scene photos from Donald Clark's files. 7 children, Sean. 7 babies who had the misfortune of being inconvenient to your operation. Kelly stared at the photos, her face cycling through shock, recognition, and finally understanding. Oh God. Oh God. Sean, you told me they were just relocations. You said the kids went to relatives. Shut up. Sean snarled, but his authority was gone. He was no longer the confident predator who dominated Preston's home. He was prey, and he knew it. Preston sat back down, completely relaxed. Now we're going to have a conversation about justice. And Sean? Kelly? I promise you're going to find it educational. Chapter 7. Truth and Consequences. Preston had learned patience in the killing fields of 3 continents. He could wait days for the perfect shot, weeks for the right moment to strike. But sitting in his own living room, watching the 2 people who'd tortured his son and planned his murder, patience was a luxury he no longer needed. Sean, Preston said conversationally, tell Kelly about the Hernandez boy. Sean's face went gray. I don't know what. Preston showed him a photograph from Donald Clark's files. Miguel Hernandez, age 6. Father was a Marine stationed in Afghanistan. You and a woman named Tasha Anderson, your previous mark, convinced his mother that Miguel would be better off with his abusive father dead. The boy was found in a drainage canal 3 weeks later. Kelly stared at Sean with growing horror. You said you'd never hurt children. You said those kids went to foster care. I did what was necessary, Sean snapped, but his voice cracked. Those kids would have grown up to ask questions, would have remembered their fathers. It was cleaner this way. Cleaner, Preston repeated. That's what you called murdering a 6-year-old. Clean. Preston stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back like an officer reviewing troops. Tell her about the others, Sean. Tell her about little Rebecca Ward, age 4. About Tommy Chun, age 8. Tell Kelly what you did to them before you killed them. Sean's silence was answer enough. Kelly pressed her hands to her mouth, tears streaming. You're a monster, she whispered. Oh God, I helped a monster. No, Kelly. Preston turned back to face them. You are a monster. You didn't just help, you participated. You chose targets. You seduced husbands to learn their schedules, their weaknesses. You've gathered intelligence on children to plan their disposal. Preston pulled out a recording device. This is a conversation between you and Donald Clark, recorded 3 weeks ago. Would you like to hear yourself discussing the best way to make Nathan's death look accidental? Kelly's composure cracked completely. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought we'd just take the money and leave. I didn't know about the children until when? Preston's voice was deadly quiet. Until last month, when Sean showed me the photos. As trophies, Kelly looked at Sean with disgust and terror. He kept pictures of them, the dead children. He said it proved he could handle any problem. Sean surged to his feet, face twisted with rage. You weak bitch. You were happy enough to take the money. Happy enough to let me discipline Nathan when he got in the way. Discipline, Preston repeated. Is that what you called beating my 8-year-old son with a belt? Starving him when he cried? Abandoning him in the woods to die? Preston moved faster than either of them could follow. His fist connected with Sean's solar plexus, dropping the man to the floor, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Let me explain something to both of you, Preston said, voice still calm. I've spent 10 years hunting the worst humanity has to offer. Warlords who use child soldiers. Dictators who murdered their own people. Terrorists who targeted schools and hospitals. But you know what? Most of them believed they were fighting for something. They had causes, however twisted. Preston knelt beside Sean, who was still struggling to breathe. You don't even have that excuse. You killed children for money. You tortured my son for fun. You're worse than terrorists, Sean. You're parasites. Kelly found her voice. Preston, please. I know I don't deserve mercy, but I was manipulated. Were you manipulated when you told the sheriff my son should have died in those woods? Preston's eyes never left hers. Were you manipulated when you filed false death papers to steal my life insurance? Were you manipulated when you watched Sean beat Nathan and did nothing to stop it? Kelly had no answer. Preston stood, checking his watch. In 15 minutes, the local police will receive an anonymous tip about suspicious activity at this address. They'll find Donald Clark's files, evidence of the murder conspiracy, and proof of child abuse. Sean will be arrested on multiple charges. Sean managed to gasp out words. What about her? Kelly has a choice to make. Preston looked at his wife. Former wife, he corrected himself. The woman in front of him was a stranger wearing a familiar face. She can run. She has 15 minutes to disappear forever. New identity, new life, constant fear that one day I'll decide she's too much of a loose end. Or, Kelly whispered, or she can stay and face justice. Prison for conspiracy, child endangerment, insurance fraud. Maybe 20 years if she cooperates against the larger network. Kelly looked between Preston and Sean, understanding dawning. You're letting me choose. I'm giving you more mercy than you ever showed Nathan. More than you showed those 7 dead children. Sean struggled to his knees. You can't do this. I have rights. Preston's laugh was like breaking glass. Rights? You think this is about legal rights? He knelt down to Sean's level. This is about consequence. For 10 years, I've been the consequence for people who think they're above accountability. Preston pulled out his phone and showed Sean a video. Surveillance footage from the warehouse where 7 bodies were being prepared for transport to a remote burial site. Every person who participated in your network is already dead, Sean. Donald Clark, your financial backers, the other women who played Kelly's role in previous operations. All of them, dead. You're the last one alive. Sean's face went white. You murdered them? I executed war criminals, Preston corrected. People who targeted American service members and their families. In my world, that's an act of war. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Preston checked his watch again. Time's up, Kelly. What's your choice? Chapter 8. The Final Hunt. Kelly ran. Preston had expected she would. Despite everything, the evidence of her complicity, the recordings of her planning Nathan's death, the cold calculation with which she'd betrayed her own family, Kelly still believed she could escape consequences through manipulation and self-preservation. Sean, handcuffed and loaded into a police car, screamed threats and accusations as the vehicle pulled away. But his words were meaningless now. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his association with the murdered members of the conspiracy would ensure he never saw freedom again. Preston stood in his driveway, watching the police process what had been his home. It would never be home again. Too much blood had been spilled here. Too many lies had taken root. He and Nathan would start fresh somewhere else. But first, Preston had one last target to acquire. Kelly had a 3-hour head start, but Preston had advantages she couldn't imagine. Satellite surveillance, facial recognition networks, financial tracking systems that could trace a dollar bill to its last transaction. The United States government had spent billions developing ways to find people who didn't want to be found, and Preston had access to all of it. She made it as far as Jacksonville before he caught up. The motel was typical of places people went to disappear, pay by cash, no questions asked clientele that minded their own business. Kelly had checked in under a false name, but Preston's facial recognition software had spotted her at a gas station 6 miles away. He knocked on her door at midnight. Hello, Kelly. She'd been sleeping, but snapped awake at his voice. Through the thin motel door, he could hear her moving, probably looking for an escape route that didn't exist. Preston, how did you find me? The same way I found the others. The same way I'll always find you, no matter where you run. The door opened slowly. Kelly looked haggard, older than her 32 years. Fear had aged her in ways that makeup couldn't hide. I chose to run, she said. You said I could run. I said you could try. Preston stepped into the small room, noting the single bag, the maps spread on the bed, the desperate planning of someone who finally understood the magnitude of her situation. But Kelly, you misunderstood something fundamental. What? I was never going to let you go free. You participated in the murder of 7 children. You torture my son. You try to have me killed. Preston's voice was conversational, almost gentle. Did you really think I'd just let you disappear to do it again to some other family? Kelly backed against the far wall. You said I had a choice. You did. Prison or running. Both in the same way, with you paying for what you've done. I was manipulated. Sean convinced me. Stop. Preston's command cut through her excuses like a blade. I've heard your phone calls with Donald Clark. I've read your text messages planning Nathan's death. I know about the insurance policies you researched, the lawyers you consulted about inheriting my military benefits. Preston pulled out a chair and sat down, completely relaxed. You weren't manipulated, Kelly. You were recruited. Someone identified you as a person with no conscience, no maternal instincts, no capacity for genuine love. Someone who could watch children die and feel nothing but inconvenience. Kelly's composure cracked. That's not true. I love Nathan. You told a sheriff that your 8-year-old son should have died in the woods because he carried loser's blood. Preston's voice remained calm, but his eyes were arctic. Those were your words, Kelly. About our child. I was upset. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Preston stood, towering over her in the small room. And that's why you can never be allowed to hurt another child. Kelly's eyes darted toward the window, calculating escape routes. What are you going to do? Why should I have done years ago? Why would I have done if I'd known what you really were? Preston reached into his jacket and Kelly flinched, expecting a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a photograph. Nathan, smiling, taken a day before Preston's last deployment. Look at him, Preston commanded. Look at the child you were willing to let die for money. Kelly glanced at the photo and looked away immediately. Preston, please. You can't even look at him, can you? Your own son. Because looking at him means acknowledging what you are. Preston put the photo away and pulled out his phone. I'm going to give you one last choice, Kelly. A real choice this time. What choice? You can take your own life, quickly, painlessly, with some small measure of dignity intact. Or I can kill you myself, the way I killed the others. Preston's thumb hovered over a contact labeled cleanup. If I make the call, your death won't be quick or painless. It will be justice for 7 murdered children. Kelly stared at him, finally understanding that all her manipulation, all her tears and excuses were powerless here. Preston Marshall wasn't a mark to be seduced or a victim to be deceived. He was something she'd never encountered before, a predator more dangerous than Sean, more ruthless than Donald Clark, more implacable than the system she'd thought she could game. You're going to murder me, she whispered. I'm going to execute a war criminal, Preston corrected. Someone who targeted American service members and murdered American children. The only question is whether you face that execution with courage or cowardice. Kelly looked around the motel room one last time, at the maps that would never lead to freedom, at the false identity documents that would never protect her, at the small bag containing everything left of her life. Nathan, she said finally, will you tell him I'm sorry? Preston considered this. No, Nathan will grow up believing his mother died years ago. He'll never know about your betrayal, your choices, or your crimes. He'll remember you as someone who loved him before she was taken away by circumstances beyond her control. Tears streamed down Kelly's face, the first genuine emotion Preston had seen from her in years. That's mercy. That's for Nathan, not for you. Preston checked his watch. You have 5 minutes to decide. Chapter 9, Blood Debts Paid. 3 months later, Preston Marshall sat in a new house in a new state, watching Nathan play in a backyard that belonged to them alone. The boy was healthier now. The haunted look was fading from his eyes, replaced by the natural curiosity of childhood returning. Daddy, Nathan called from his swing set. Will you push me higher? Preston set aside the newspaper, which contained a small article about Kelly Marshall, military widow, found dead in a Florida motel from an apparent suicide, and walked over to his son. How high do you want to go? Higher than the trees. Higher than the clouds. Preston pushed the swing, watching Nathan soar against a blue sky unmarked by the shadows of their past. The boy's laughter was pure, innocent, free from the fear that had haunted him for months. The official story was simple. Kelly Marshall, distraught over her husband's death in action, had spiraled into depression and addiction. Her boyfriend, Sean Knapp, had been revealed as an abusive criminal who'd taken advantage of her vulnerability. The tragic end to a military family destroyed by the pressures of deployment and predatory manipulation. Only Preston knew the truth. Only Preston carried the weight of what had really happened in that Florida motel room. Kelly had chosen dignity in the end. She'd taken the pills Preston provided, quick, painless, leaving no evidence of murder. Her final words had been a message for Nathan that Preston would never deliver. Tell him I loved him before I became this. But Preston had been right. Nathan would never know about his mother's true nature. The boy would grow up believing in the sanitized version of events, protected from truths that would only bring pain. Sean Knapp was serving consecutive life sentences for multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder, child abuse, and racketeering. He would die in prison, forgotten by everyone except the families of his victims, who would visit his grave periodically to confirm he was still dead. Donald Clark had died in military custody, officially a suicide, though the guards on duty that night had been Task Force 117 members who understood the value of justice over bureaucracy. The wider conspiracy was finished. 12 other members of the network had been quietly eliminated over the course of 2 months. No trials, no appeals, no possibility of escape or reduced sentences. Just permanent solutions to a permanent problem. "Daddy, look how high I am." Preston smiled at his son, the first genuine smile he'd felt in months. Nathan was safe. The predators were dead. The debts were paid. That evening, after Nathan was asleep, Preston sat on his porch with a glass of whiskey and his secure phone. Glenn Booker called from wherever Task Force 117 was operating now. "How's civilian life treating you?" Glenn asked. "Better than expected. Nathan's doing well. We're both doing well. Any regrets about leaving the team?" Preston considered this. He'd submitted his resignation the day after Kelly's death, choosing to become a full-time father rather than continue a career that had cost him so much. "None. My war's over, Glenn. I fought the only battle that ever really mattered. The one for your son. The one for my family. Or what's left of it." Glenn was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth, Preston, what you did, it was justice. Those people were predators. They would have killed again. I know." Preston watched stars emerge in the darkening sky. "But it wasn't about justice, Glenn. It was about consequences. For 10 years, I've been teaching people that actions have consequences. Sometimes the lesson is the last thing they ever learn. And now I teach Nathan how to ride a bike, how to throw a baseball, how to be strong without being cruel." Preston finished his whiskey. "How to be the kind of man who protects instead of destroys. Think you'll ever come back? To the team?" Preston looked through the window at Nathan's room, where nightlights kept the darkness at bay and stuffed animals stood guard against nightmares. "No, I've got a different mission now. One that matters more than anything I've ever done." After the call ended, Preston walked through his new house, checking locks and security systems with the thoroughness of a man who knew how easily safety could be shattered. But these weren't the paranoid preparations of someone living in fear. They were the careful precautions of a protector safeguarding what mattered most. In Nathan's room, Preston adjusted the boy's blankets and kissed his forehead. Nathan stirred slightly, muttering in his sleep, not the terrified whimpers of months past, but the normal murmurs of childhood dreams. "Sleep well, son," Preston whispered. "The monsters are all gone now." And they were. Every last one of them. Preston Marshall had spent a decade hunting evil in the darkest corners of the world. But the greatest evil he'd ever faced had been sleeping in his own bed, sharing his own name, threatening the one person who mattered more than life itself. That evil was dead now, buried and forgotten, erased from Nathan's future as thoroughly as if it had never existed. For the first time in years, Preston Marshall slept peacefully through the night, knowing that justice had been served and his family was safe.